Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the book of Joshua. Today we're going to look at chapters 16 to 20, and as promised, or probably more accurately warned, these are not going to be really the most exciting chapters for us to read. But you should do your best to read them, or at the very least, try to at least speed read them or skim through at least, and make sure that you catch the major points. Now, with that being said, here are the things that I want you to notice in this reading. Chapter 16, we see the division of land for the children of Joseph, and it's going to be split between his two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. And in this chapter, we look at the separate inheritance that the children of Ephraim got. That's what chapter 16 talks about. But look at what already starts to go wrong here at the end of this chapter. Verse 10 says that they did not drive the Canaanites out of the land. And why is that important? Well, first of all, because God told them that they were to come and completely wipe out the people of the land and leave no one behind. And they did not do that. And why was that important? Because the Canaanites and their idolatrous religions, and the way they practiced those religions, they were slowly going to work on Israel like a cancer, and they were going to infect them, and they were going to take a hold of them, and we will see more of that. We'll see how that plays out for them in the book of Judges, and spoiler alert, it's not going to end well for Israel. So when they didn't obey God completely, they were really just setting themselves up for failure, and we see the beginning of that right here in Joshua chapter 16. And then we move on to chapter 17, and this is about Manasseh. Manasseh was the brother of Ephraim and was still Joseph's child. And we'll see at the end of this chapter that they also didn't drive out the inhabitants on their land, which will, of course, become a problem for them as well. And you'll also notice that in the middle of this chapter, some of the inheritance was given to his daughters. Now, that's a little different because in those days, the inheritance, the blessings, all these things were always handed down to the sons. But this was actually fulfilling a promise that Moses had made, that when there was no son, that the inheritance would fall to the female heir, to the women. So the daughters here get the inheritance here from Manasseh, and that's just kind of an interesting little note there. It's not really significant, just interesting. So at the end, you'll notice that they actually asked Joshua for more land because there were so many of them. But Joshua tells them that they don't need more land. You guys are both, the tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh, you're both large. And in fact, they were so large that they gave them each their own inheritance, really, but that they could come together and that there was more Canaanite land up there in the mountains and that they were strong enough to come together and go fight this battles. And so the children of Ephraim and Manasseh were looking at, they had so many people that it was a problem, but Joshua said, you guys are looking at this the wrong way. This isn't a problem. This is a strength for you. You are so strong that you are strong enough to go and conquer even more land that you've already given. So just go and take those people out and you'll have that land as well. And so that's what they were told to do. That you're not getting any more land. You have plenty. You just need to take these Canaanites out of that land. So they are able to do that. So then we look at chapter 18. We see Joshua call the people together and send out men to survey the land. They'd already conquered the land for the most part, but basically Joshua is saying that even though the land is ours, it's not going to divide ourselves. So we're going to have to do that part. Get to do that dirty work. So this is actually a pretty good reminder that even though God's promises may be within our reach, they may not be yet in our hands. So God had promised the people the land, but they still had to do the work of taking it. God has a purpose for your life, but you must walk with him by faith to see what that purpose is going to be and to see that purpose become a reality. God has a plan for us. He has a vision for us, and he has something that he wants us to do with our lives. But he's not just going to do it, and we're not going to do any of the legwork on our own, right? We're going to have to do some of that work. And that's what's happening here for these people, and that's what happens in our lives as well, in every day. And now, if you remember reading about Abram or Abraham, this is certainly evident in his life too. God was able to bless him in many ways because he was faithful and he was willing to go do the things that God called him to do. And now the rest of this chapter, and then in chapter 19, shows us the inheritance of Benjamin, Simeon, Zebulun, Issachar, Asher, Naphtali, and Dan. And after we see that, Joshua also gets his personal inheritance. Joshua has been a faithful and a good leader, and after he had taken care of the people, he had his choice of where he wanted to settle. And so then we get to chapter 20, where it talks about cities of refuge. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about this because it might be a little bit confusing. This concept is a little bit different. But if you look at the book of Numbers, which we will get to eventually in our books, in our readings, but you'll see that there's something that the Lord has commanded them to do. He's commanded them to build these cities of refuge. And basically what these are is it's a place where someone that accidentally kills someone or commits a crime can go to basically to wait trial, right? So it's like they're in protective custody almost, like they're being held so that they can be safe. And these that had to be done because if you were to kill someone, it was in the law that the avenger of blood, or like the closest blood relative of the person who was killed, could go and basically get revenge, or I wouldn't really call it revenge, kill them because of what they had done to their family member. So it's a lot different in the world that we live in now, but we'll look at that more when we get to the book of Numbers. So these cities of refuge are places that needed to be there because things were going to happen, where there's humans, there are going to be mistakes, and sin obviously leads to death, as we've talked about a lot already. And so whenever these accidental deaths, whenever these things were happen, these people were to go to these cities of refuge where they would be held safe until they could be judged, and a judge could decide, was this really an accident, or did you just kill someone? And then in that case, you had to pay the price for that. Now, there's also some rules that go along with these cities of refuge. Like if you stayed in a refuge until the high priest died, you could be free to leave, and then you would be protected. But we'll get more into that as we talk more about the cities of refuge when they're mentioned in the book of Numbers. So they set up 6 of these cities throughout the land so that no matter where you lived, you were within a reasonable distance to a city of refuge, so you could go there and be safe until you got your trial. So I'm sorry this is not the most exciting of readings, but I hope you have picked up something from this. I hope that something you can take from this. And that is our reading for today in the book of Joshua. So I'll see you back here again tomorrow in the book of Psalms.